Do you care about people and enjoy helping in some way? Then a career in human services might interest you. Human services workers help individuals and families meet their personal needs. You might help people manage the many mental, emotional, and practical demands of everyday life, such as finding a home or securing childcare. You might work in a government office, hospital, nonprofit agency, nursing home, spa, hotel, or school. Or you might work in your own home. For example, you might help students with career and education choices at a high school, cut and color hair in a salon, or manage funeral services at a funeral home. There are almost 50 careers across 5 pathways in the Human Services Cluster. Those pathways include early childhood development and services, counseling and mental health services, family and community services, personal care services, consumer services.
I chose to go into this industry at a young age. I went right out of high school. I've been in the industry 34 years. And I was behind the chair for 17 years and just decided I wanted to do something a little different. So I became an instructor, and I've been teaching cosmetology for 15 years. And then Barber, I've been teaching for 7 years. Typical day in the salon would run by appointments. You would have your own station that you would work at, and you would have guests come into the salon, and you would provide services for them. Walk-ins or appointments, people you know, or people that you would like to come back for more services. Being with other people, making them feel better about the way they look, about the way they feel, and just the interaction with lots of different people and personalities. I loved that. Endless possibilities. You can become specialist in, an area, hair coloring. You can be a specialist with nails. You can go into education, where you're up on a stage for hair shows. You can do stage work. You can work on a cruise ship, travel around and do hair on a cruise ship. So lots of possibilities. The type of skills to begin, I would say, would be hand and eye coordination. You have to have a visual. You have to be able to visualize things as well. Pictures are popular. People bring in pictures and say, I want to look like this. So you have to be visual and a bit artistic because you have to create. My advice for anyone interested in cosmetology and barbering would be to observe in a salon or even work in a salon. I worked in a salon while I was in cosmetology school, and just to get the feel of the day in and the day out of how the business runs, how services go. We run by appointments, so, have to have good time management skills.
They're cosmetology students. I'm a barber student. The difference is I get to learn facial shaves, but we also, in the barber program, learn hair color, almost the same cuts, pretty much the same cuts, but we do get to learn the razor shaves, face shaves, neck shaves, that kind of thing.
A typical day for an esthetician has a couple different ways that you can go with this state license. Most of the time for my graduates, they work in a salon. So when you work in a salon, you're able to offer facials, you're able to offer makeup applications, spray tan applications, eyelash applications. So there's lots of things that you can do in a salon here in Southern Illinois. Another branch that you could take is to work for a dermatologist or to work for a plastic surgeon in a medical setting. Although working for them may lead you to taking more advanced classes, you would be able to work with like microneedling, dermaplaning, laser hair removal. So all of those services need more certifications because you're working with a physician, like you're directly underneath that physician working as their assistant. So as an esthetician, the opportunities that are available for you are to go ahead and work in a salon. And that's what a lot of our graduates do. They just rent a room or they have a room specifically in a salon, and they are able to perform their facials, their makeup, their lashes, spray tan services in that individual room. Another option that you have is working for a chain company. Sometimes that is a little bit easier starting out because they send you to more trainings to learn more about product ingredients, more about product knowledge, and those salons would be like Ulta, Hand and Stone, Massage NB. And then, like I said, you also have the opportunity to work into a medical setting as that physician's assistant. So you would do more advanced practices with that. So as an esthetician, the services or the skills that you need for that training is you have to, in the state of Illinois, you have to complete an education program of 750 state clock hours. Once you receive that, you will have your esthetician certificate. In Illinois, that is not enough for you to work as an esthetician. You have to take your licensing exams through Illinois Department of Professional and Financial Education, and then you are able to work as a licensed esthetician in this field. And really the only requirement that you need to start aesthetic school is you have to be 16 years of age. You have to have either your high school diploma or your GED, and that is it. We'll teach you everything else. I would definitely see go for it. I feel like within our industry, since it's kind of new and upcoming, not a lot of people know about it. So I feel like you may not have some positivity from your family, but do it and put everything that you have into it, and you will be very successful at this. But you have to want it as much as we as instructors want it for you. So don't give up. If that's your true passion, follow through with it and get it done.
I'm doing the LED treatment, and it is with our aging skin treatment that we do here in school. And it is with the, it penetrates down into the skin and helps with collagen. The full facial should take anywhere from 60 minutes, but the LED lights, you go to each place, like whether it be like chin, cheeks, forehead, and you're gonna keep it there for 3 minutes.
This is my doll head, Lisa, and I just did a paraffin wax on her. So I would put a mask on her, and then I would put a sheet mask on her, and I would put paraffin wax over that, and I would let that dry, and then I would remove it with a hot steam towel.
So I'm finishing up, I'm putting on a toner, and then a serum and a moisturizer.
So here at Rend College, we are a Dermalogica partner school. So what that means is we have partnered with Dermalogica Skincare. Dermalogica Skincare is also an education program. So once you graduate from our program, you're still able to take classes to continue your education, to learn more about new products, new innovations, new upcoming trends that are out there in our industry. Our industry is ever changing, it is evolving all the time, so you have to stay up to date with everything that's going on.
So I worked with adults with disabilities when I was 18, and I was here at Rend Lake, and I knew that I liked working with people. I actually had initially thought that I wanted to go into early childhood education, but after having some work experience, changed my mind. So I changed my major to rehabilitation and then to psychology. And then I ran into a friend who was at SIU, and she said, social work is really like you. She was in the program, and we had been friends for a while. So I took her advice. I took a few social work classes, and I realized she was right. And I changed my major then ultimately to social work. So it really fit my personality and my life goals and a lot of my life experience. And I also realized that social work is a really versatile degree. So I've been able to work with like a lot of different people in a lot of different environments. I have my bachelor's and also my master's in social work. So on any given day, I talk to a lot of students. Some of them are in need of resources. Some of them might be in crisis. Some of them might need a referral for counseling or mental health services. And then sometimes they just need a mentor. So, what I do primarily is work one-on-one with students. But I also work on some community outreach projects. Most recently, I've been helping to set up some trainings for faculty, staff, and students that address issues that relate to mental health and diversity. So that's kind of the bulk of what I do. I've always liked working with people. I think that we exist in relation to others, our lives, our families, all of those things that have influenced us really and have shaped who we are, kind of make the world go round. So I wanted to do something where I could work with people, understand people, make a difference in people's lives. I'm really interested in, how people think and what influences them. And so I just and I love sociological theory. I'm a dork like that. So here's the good thing about social work. You can work with kids, with families, with communities. You can work at schools, at hospitals, at nursing homes. You can work with people who have been through trauma or who are incarcerated. You can work with veterans. I mean, there are so many opportunities and possibilities when it comes to social work. So your typical day is going to look different depending on the population that you're working with. But for the most part, you're going to be talking to people. You're going to be listening to people. You're going to be trying to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. Even if you've been through something similar that they've been through, it's really still hard to know how it's affected them or how they're internalizing it. So I think probably the biggest thing as a social worker is really to be compassionate and to listen and to be empathetic and just to try to be human, right? And so I think that kind of spans throughout the profession as a whole. When you've made a difference, and sometimes you don't know, I may run into a student 5 or 10 years down the road who says, wow, right, your class made a difference, but talking to you after class really made all the difference because it helped me get through whatever I was going through. I think everybody, at some point in everybody's life, we probably all need a social worker because nobody is problem free. We all go through stressors, health issues, family problems. And so, being able to be there to help people through those, to support them through those problems, I think is really probably my favorite part. That can be stressful too. So, this is a profession with a lot of risk, but also a lot of reward. So a lot of people think that social work is DCFS. I can't tell you how many times someone said, oh, you're a social worker, you must work for DCFS or you must do child welfare. And that is certainly a part of social work, but it is one of many choices. So like I said before, you can work with a lot of different populations. You may work one-on-one with individuals, you may work with large groups, you may work with communities. I have worked for the American Cancer Society. I have worked with adults with disabilities. I did therapy to private practice. And then of course I've worked here for a long time, but there are just so many possibilities. And I think that's, if you like working with people, I think that's something to keep in mind because you might get burnt out in a certain environment and decide you need to change. And if you have a degree in social work, you're not gonna have to go back to school. You can use that same skill set and that same education to go and work with a different population. Or, maybe the company you're working for is downsizing, or you just realize that this population isn't a good fit for you. You can go work with a different population in a different environment. So that's the one thing. I have a lot of students that are like, well, I don't know if I want to do psychology or social work. And I don't want to steer you away from psychology if that's your passion. And by all means, take classes in both and kind of see what works best for you. But when it comes to looking at a degree and when it comes to looking at employability, there's a lot of options with social work. So psychology is more of the one-on-one. It looks at thought processes, at someone's mental status. So, as a social worker, my background is actually in mental health. If you get your master's degree, you can choose a different track. So I chose the mental health track. There was also a child and family track and a school social work track. So I took a lot of classes that were psychology type classes to learn about thought processes and mental health conditions and things like coping mechanisms. So there's some overlap, but with psychology, that's more assessment and analysis of the individual and their mental status or their thought process. Social work is more holistic and comprehensive. We look at the individual as a whole. So we take the psychology aspect, but we also then look at the family and their job and the community and things that have happened in their past. And we look at all of those things together to try to understand the individual. So you could work in a hospital, you could work in a nursing home, you could work in an elementary school or in a college setting, you could work in a jail or a prison. You might work in a child welfare system, and that might mean working somewhere like DCFS, but it could also mean working in a residential facility like Sparrow, for example, which is in Mount Vernon. You could work in a counseling or mental health type environment, which we would call a clinical environment. So you might work at like a private practice and do outpatient therapy, or you could work in a psychiatric hospital and do evaluations or treatment. You could also work at a homeless shelter, or you could work with veterans. You could work with people who have experienced like certain problems or issues. So the possibilities are really endless. Probably the most important skill would be communication. And when we think about communication, we think about talking. I'm a talker, I love to talk. And as a social worker, I've had to remind myself, it's not about you, it's about your client, it's about this person who has come to you for help and support. You need to listen to them. We all want to be listened to, we all want to be validated or heard, and so I think the most important skill that you're going to use as a social worker would be that listening skill. Compassion, empathy, those are really important skills too, and I think some of those are natural, but you can also teach yourself those skills or foster those skills by taking certain classes or putting yourself in certain situations. You will probably need, believe it or not, some math skills because you're going to be doing some behavioral analysis type stuff. So, social workers and math don't always mix, but that's a skill you might actually need, especially if you go into research or if you want to work in that clinical environment. And then another really important skill is critical thinking. Again, you don't know what somebody's going through, even if you've been through something similar yourself. So you might have to really think about the right kinds of questions to ask them to get them to open up. You might really have to think about all of those factors, those things that are going on in their life, not just the trauma they've been through or the experience they've had, but maybe things that have happened, in the past or at their job or whatever. So you really have to think a lot about all of the different things that make us human. I think my biggest piece of advice would be to take care of yourself. A lot of people go into social work because they're helpers. They want to take care of other people. And when you do that, it's really easy to forget about your own needs. So you've got to take your sick days, you've got to take your vacation days, you've got to spend time with your friends and your family. I have to remind myself of that. I'm guilty of it myself because I will put my students' needs before my own or my clients' needs before my own and not always even realize that I'm doing it. And I think that is the biggest issue or the hardest part of social work is that social workers take care of other people before themselves. I think another thing that's important is to get a master's. A bachelor's is great and you can do a lot with a bachelor's, but if you want to work in a clinical environment, if you want to teach, if you want to do any kind of therapy, you're going to need a master's, and that's going to allow you to have a lot more employment opportunities and also to make more money. So I would think, if possible, and you don't have to do it right away. I took a 3-year break between my bachelor's and master's just to work and get some life experience to figure out exactly what I wanted to do. It's really, 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 really important. Like, I cannot stress enough, do volunteer work in your community, at a food bank, at a homeless shelter. If you go to church, maybe through your church, a local nursing home or a school, anywhere that will allow you to do volunteer work, take that opportunity because you might realize this really isn't for me, and it's better to realize that early on. Or you might realize, I don't like working with this population, I'm going to do volunteer work in a different setting. Then you can know whether or not social work is for you or human services is for you. But outside of that, volunteer somewhere that you think that you can use your skills, and that will help you to develop that empathy and those listening skills that I mentioned.
If you are interested in a career in human services, Rend College is here to help you prepare with a variety of programs to develop the knowledge and skills needed. RLC has career technical education programs such as Barber Associate of Applied Science degree or certificate, Cosmetology Associate of Applied Science degree or certificate, Aesthetics certificate, Nail Technology certificate, Barber Teacher 1 or Barber Teacher 2 certificate, Cosmetology Teacher 1 or Cosmetology Teacher 2 certificate, Early Childhood Education Associate of Applied Science degree and or certificates, or transfer degree programs such as Psychology Associate of Arts degree, Social Work Associate of Arts degree, Sociology Associate of Arts degree.